Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Multi-Channel Direct Marketing Deep Dive, How to Plan Impactful Direct Marketing Multi-Channel Campaigns. Today's presentation will be recorded and a recording will be provided to all registrants via email in the next few days. You will be muted during today's presentation. If you have any questions at all, please type them into the GoToMeeting chat module and we can address them at the end in Q&A. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce today's speakers, Jenny Lassie, Digital Marketing Strategist, and to my right is Amy Fox, the VP of Business Development, and Laura Yakovetsky, Senior New Business Development Account Manager. A little bit about us. Infinity Direct has been doing direct marketing with heavy emphasis in direct mail and email for 30 years, and in 2018, Infinity and Bridge worked together on a government RFP and a partnership was formed. There's a lot of synergy in what we do, but we both have very different things that we bring to the table that benefit each other. Our relationship evolved as Infinity had a growing need for identity resolution to help our customers gain more customers. Then Infinity was acquired in 2019 by Impact Connects, who had a full staff of in-house data scientists and audience modelers. The audience modeling was the missing piece, and with this addition, Multichannel Direct was born. Multichannel Direct pools together the expertise and strengths of our partnership you won't find anywhere else. Infinity models the audience, creates the media plan, and with channel lineup, designs, codes, creates all the creative, or we can take the creative from the client, and Bridge onboards the audience, resolves identities, serves impressions, and we all review performance to optimize the campaign to move the budget where the targets are engaging. Multichannel Direct They reach audiences in a direct way in multiple channels with common creative and call to action that outperforms traditional direct mail and advertising. The key difference between multi-channel direct and traditional direct mail and advertising is that multi-channel direct targets a specific individual and serves impressions to them where they are. Why? Why is this important? It's because every individual isn't listening on the same marketing channels in the same way. Research shows that 6 to 8 touches is what it takes to generate a viable sales lead. And we reach the target in a very direct way with optimal number of impressions per channel where they are, then drive the individual somewhere to take action in some way. Clients have requested to make their ad, make sure their ad is displayed on a particular website like Yahoo Finance and news sites. And I have to explain to that the audience and targets and their use of the internet that's really what determines where the ads are served. So we're following them. It's an important shift that makes multi-channel direct. I would also like to point out that we exclude serving ads on any inappropriate websites to protect our client's brand. So even if the target is there, we don't go there. So don't worry about anything like that. Traditional advertising uses a query or search criteria to define who you want to target. But depending on the data sources, you'll reach a different pool of targets. Some overlap with other channels, but it's very hard to get a good picture of direct attribution for your campaign and which channel influenced the most conversion events. Think of screens like beacons. They send signals and they request content. This way, we serve a direct impression to the individual in a display ad when they're on a news site, and an ad in their Facebook newsfeed when they're on Facebook, and an OTT CTV video ad when they're streaming from their streaming services. And because targets don't necessarily follow the path you lay out for them, direct attribution can be super tricky. So your ad might have a specific call-in number and landing page URL behind it, but if they navigate away from the ad, they may Google your name, click on the link in search results, and call the number listed on your website, or submit a different form where the conversion is attributed to something other than the campaign, like organic search or something. That's probably the most common. But that really applies to all marketing attribution, really. So whether you use a weighted first touch or last touch attribution model, all impressions served in a multi-channel campaign influence behavior and contribute. And when the target is ready to convert, they will, and when they want and how they want to do it. So to prove that this works, it's common that we take leads or customer file from our clients after the campaign and bump it up against the modeled audience used. That way we can show conversions that are indirectly attributable to our campaign when direct attribution is impossible. This analysis shows how much incremental lift the campaign net in comparison to a holdout or control group of targets who didn't receive any impressions, but from the same modeled audience. So let's touch on audience modeling for a minute. So audience modeling is an art and a data science, literally. It's our secret weapon and what fuels what we do for any marketing initiative as direct marketers. Our modelers pool together consumer attributes, segmentation scoring to find targets that have the highest propensity to purchase from our clients for generating new leads. Also worth mentioning is the upside to COVID-19, if there is one, was the shift to working from home, which made it a lot easier to execute multi-channel direct campaigns destined for B2B audiences as well, since we're basically targeting individuals where they are. We execute multi-channel campaigns on both sides of the customer journey, acquisition and retention. Now remember, it's all about the audience and where they are in the customer journey. If our clients supply us a list of warm leads, we can match and serve impressions to that audience to influence them to convert. If our clients supply us with their customer file, we can match, serve impressions to that audience for, upsell, cross-sell. But we can also model off of that audience, which is the glitter and the magic, to find more like them and serve impressions in an awareness campaign to nurture that audience down the funnel. Understanding what digital channels to include in your multi-channel campaign will depend on the audience. We'll go back to this again and again. It's all about the audience, the number of targets we match to digital channels, but also consumer attributes of the modeled audience. So we'll build a media plan for your multi-channel campaign based on the audience. Once we onboard it, we can see where people have accounts and which channels would actually have the greatest reach. But from there, we'll build a media plan and basically what channels are going to perform the best, how many impressions to deliver to each matched lead in the channel, and what that budget looks like. Or we can also craft a media plan for you based on what you have to spend, ensuring that that you get the most bang for your buck. That said, I'm going to turn this over to Amy Fox to elaborate more on that.
Great, thanks, Jenny. So our goal with our media planning is really to build around the audience itself, just like Jenny was saying. We want to include channels that align with how these individuals absorb their media. So by serving where our audience is on their preferred devices and optimizing the media mix as we serve, we're essentially creating personalized experiences for each individual. So every person has a different media mix because everyone is different and they have different actions online. There's really three key components to our plan, and the first one is that audience. We want to choose the right audience, and we want to make sure that they're relevant to the offer and they'd be interested in the offer. And that's where Infinity Direct comes in with their audience, their data science skills. We also want to choose the overall campaign goal and make sure that the media plan aligns with that campaign goal. For example, if the goal is website visits, then we're going to be optimizing towards click-through rate. So we want to make sure that we have a plan that has a high click-through rate according to the channels. We also want to shape that media plan along with market research and any sort of historical data that we have that we can put into how we think this audience is going to respond. We can put towards that goal. For example, if your audience is older, they may be more responsive to email marketing channels than to something like TikTok. And if your audience is predominantly female, they're more likely to be on Facebook and Instagram, so it may make sense to include those in your channel mix. And the third thing is really optimization. So this plan is going to be our initial guide, but we're going to optimize as we serve. We want to watch the trends in the data, and we want to shift according to response so that your plan becomes better and stronger. And that's really the key to the success of your plan, is to have that optimization element. So Infinity Direct builds and models the audience, and then it's Bridge's job to activate that audience online. So Bridge houses compliant, permission-based PII data. This allows us to onboard the same audience across multiple media channels because we have so many different unique identifiers tied to that audience that can be used to make that direct connection from person to device for serving, kind of what Jenny was going into earlier. We also have the ability to fill in the gaps in the data set, so we can append email where possible, we can add in additional targeting segments, and we can even build some lookalikes from the data, typically after 90 days of running a campaign. So that way we can extend our marketing to new people, and we have enough time watching the trends in the data in the media plan during that 90-day period to make that decision to extend our audience. So the PII itself gives us a lot of insight into where to serve. For example, if somebody has 5 mobile devices, mobile display is obviously a key component to our media plan. If that person has a very active deliverable email address on file, we'll likely recommend email marketing in the plan. The data itself helps us build that initial media plan, which includes those impressions by channel. And we also want to use our own expertise and market research to further shape the plan. For example, for B2B campaigns, we find native advertising to be really effective. So for building a B2B plan, we will likely recommend it and include it in the channel mix. So there's some math involved with your media plan. This simple formula that we have up on this slide will help you set the frequency. It's not an exact science when you're setting frequency because you have only so much control over how many ads you can serve each individual. Because you have to serve them as they're online. So it's really only an estimate, but gives you an idea of the total touch points that you could start to shape the number of impressions you want by media channel. Because we want that plan to be reasonable and attainable. So we don't want to risk underserving and not fulfilling all the allocated impressions in our media plan, but we also don't want to overserve the audience and be obnoxious. And we also want the pacing to be strong. Pacing is a really key component to your media plan because if you don't have enough impressions over a short period of time, then it's not going to be impactful. And then the same thing is you don't want to serve too many impressions over too short a time period as well, because that could be annoying for the individuals receiving the ads. So you want to stay top of mind throughout the campaign flight, and we typically recommend a 30-day campaign flight while balancing the high-cost rich media, such as any sort of audio or video creative, with static ads that are lower cost, high frequency, and increase that brand recognition. So next up, Laura's going to dive into how we actually optimize our live campaigns.
Thanks, Amy. So let's talk about once your media plan has launched. We can't just set it and forget it. The initial plan really lays down the groundwork for optimizing at the campaign level based on how the audience is really interacting with the campaign. So no matter what, if it's large or small, or if it's maybe 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, infinite days, or the types of media channels included in your campaign, it really is crucial to the campaign's success to dive deep with ongoing reporting. So although I might be looking at the campaign every day, it's important to have a comprehensive overarching report of all the channels we're doing every 7 days to really identify trends of the campaign. So we typically start to see audience trends on the 7 to 10 day mark, in which we're able to pivot our tactics. So this is where strategic thinking kind of comes across all of our teams involved, and we are able to maximize our audience engagement. So sometimes we think the audience might interact with the campaign, but that's not exactly how it goes according to plan. And that's okay, but we need to be able to shift some of our tactics quickly and kind of hit the audience where they are. So you're probably thinking, what are we doing? We're actually optimizing. So there are a few metrics we look at in order to identify how we can improve a campaign. Obviously, with different media channels, everything is recorded differently. So an email metrics might be very different from a video or connected TV campaign. So we do look at the different marketing tactics in order to measure them accordingly. So here are just a few examples of the types of optimizations we can make. Really the most important is audience reach. So this is talking about how much of our target audience are we able to serve ads to. So on social media, they might be really active, but not so active on a streaming device. But say for a younger audience, if we onboarded data, they might not be as active on, say, a desktop computer. So this is really important to look to make sure that our audience is actually able to be served ad to. The next is CTR. So this explains the amount of impressions served relative to the amount of clicks returned. And this is a really important metric. So as Amy was saying earlier, we don't want to oversaturate the market and then become annoying because then we get audience fatigue. So that's a really important metric to keep in mind as we're looking at how well the campaign is pacing. Another one is ad size unit performance. So these are just simply the ad sizes or the different types of media that we're serving. This can also come down to the creative. So we're looking at the specific impressions and clicks that are going to the different videos or banner ads. Sometimes we'll A/B test for the different creatives to see, and then we can shift those impressions towards the unit that has more engagement. That also comes along with the device type. So where are our audiences more active? Sometimes as we see for B2B, we see a lot more activity on desktop devices. However, since everyone pretty much has a mobile device or a tablet device, we can see the shift of where our audience is and how can we bid higher for those impressions on specific devices. Another example is time of day or day of week. So we can turn on or off serving ads at certain times if we're not active. It might not make sense to be serving at a certain time or maybe on the weekend, depending on what the offer is. Another lastly really important one is just the impression availability and the bid win rate. So that means, are we bidding on ads that maybe we're not winning because our audiences aren't on those sites? Jenny mentioned something earlier that's really important. Sometimes the advertiser may think, oh, we want to be on the NewYorkTimes.com because that's where our audience is. Well, your audience isn't on Times.com every single second of the day. So what are they doing on the other sites or apps that they're on? That's where we can see the impression availability and also the bid win rate. So that comes into a really important just market because it matters where our audience is, and just trying to pivot and push everything to where the audience is most frequenting. So this is why ongoing reporting campaign optimizations are a really useful tactic that allows us to shift the budget, move some things around. It's not a set it and forget it, and then we can really create a comprehensive analysis of our total audience.
Thank you, Laura. That was great stuff. If you haven't already posted a question in the chat pod, you may do so now. And I see that there's a couple in there now, and I have a couple that were sent to me in other methods. Let me just start off here. Okay, Amy, I'll direct this one to you. So how does identity resolution work in this instance? Is it PII compliant?
Yeah, so how it works is we're trying to find different identifiers that surround an individual, so we have multiple ways to serve them advertising, basically. So we want to know all the devices that individual owns. We want to be able to tie them to their social media page, to their laptop, to the browser on their laptop. So we're using PII to do that. That's the basis of our database. So we're able to connect an encrypted email address to a mobile advertising ID so that we know this individual has this smartphone and we're going to use that smartphone to serve. And it is compliant. We make sure that everything we do is compliant. The way we house data, the way we connect data is done in a compliant format. Everything is permission-based and updated. We actually go through several audits per year by different data providers to make sure that we're falling within that compliance. And the benefit of serving this way is really that it's cookieless. We're using email address as the basis for the majority of the individuals. And then we're tying that email address to other data points like postal information. We're using it to onboard for social media, for Facebook and Instagram. So that way we're not reliant on cookie data to do our serving. So when cookies become obsolete, it won't affect our core database that we use for building these audiences.
Cool, thank you. Let's see, this one's about Facebook. Laura, I'm going to direct this one to you. So if we're already doing ads on Facebook, would a multi-channel campaign make it so we're basically competing against ourselves for the same ad space? So I know that this has come up in a few of our programs, and we solve that problem.
Yeah, so for Facebook specifically, so since we're using the onboarded audience from whether it's a client file or if it's acquisition or brand new, it just would depend upon really when the main brand is doing their own advertising versus what we're doing. It's really, you're not competing against yourself, you're almost just extending the reach. So I would think of it as a different tactic for a different audience.
Okay. And just to add a little bit to that, I mean, for people that haven't done a multi-channel program before, we'll share basically the audience to suppress from your own. So we, and all of that is de-identified, IDs for Facebook, and you'd simply just suppress that from your existing, just to prevent any, double dipping, if you will. All right. Okay, a private message to organizer. All right, we have what makes your audience modeling better than our list of audience selects we use for Google Display and Social? Aha. I'll take this one. So there are, general audience selects you can do in like Google Ad Manager and Facebook Ad Manager and other types of segmentation you could possibly target. The difference is that the engagements that we do with our clients is it's a longer engagement. First of all, it's not like okay, we want to select males 25 to 35 who own a ATV or something like that. We're going way deeper and actually creating a model of prospects that have the highest propensity to purchase from you. Sorry, I'm like about to sneeze. So what makes our audience modeling better is we're factoring a lot of other things other than just those simple selects. So we're pulling in like personics, segmentation codes to really round out our data, and then using future performance data, our models are constantly working to be better, right? So it's like we're going to be funneling in more customers that are coming in and updating the model, because we may have found out that we have really 4 basic personas that we have in our system versus 2 that we initially thought. So our audience modeling is always evolving. Okay. Hope that answers the question. If not, let us know. We also have the email address info@infinitydirect.com. If you think of any questions after the webinar, feel free to send those in. So let's see here. Amy, I'm going to direct this one to you. This is a question that we get a lot. Would we have to disclose on our website anything special like in a privacy policy if we do this?
So no, so we are doing cookieless serving. We're not relying on pixel placed on your website and then retargeting them. We already have the data of the audience that we want to target, whether or not they visit your website. So it's a much easier way to maintain compliance. You would not have to make any adjustments to your privacy policy, and we maintain compliance on our side as far as maintaining the permission for serving this audience. So it's all on us, basically.
Well, that's good. I'm sure that that because that seems to be a barrier to a lot of campaigns. Is are we kind of crossing all the T's from a legal perspective before we do anything? So thank you.
Especially with email marketing too. We're taking on the compliance, the CAN-SPAM compliance, CCPA compliance for our email marketing services. So that's something to keep in mind.
Oh yes, and that definitely dovetails into the next question, which was, does email marketing even work anymore for prospecting? And I'll take that on just because I'm a super huge email geek. And yes, it absolutely does. But I will say this, the caveat is that email works wonderfully for prospecting. As a standalone channel, it's not as effective as layering it on to other channels. So, I mean, Infinity from our past, like we've always done, excuse me, direct mail and email in conjunction with each other. I mean, direct mail, of course, that's where we're the experts in. When we layer on email, we see that incremental lift. If we were just to do an email acquisition campaign, there's definitely some wins you can get out of that, but it's not necessarily going to net, okay, we have this many sales from all these acquisition emails, simply because it's a really crowded channel, and most people, especially if they've never received email from you, um, you know, they may not engage. So just setting that expectation here. Oh, okay. Laura, I'm going to direct this one to you. We really don't have any idea which channels would perform best for us. How could this help us learn what does?
So that is where we definitely would take the more historic approach to see what have you done in the past as far as marketing goes, and then how can we slowly start with a test campaign. So that would be simply just allocating certain media channels, maybe small budgets across, either social, programmatic, audio, programmatic display, and then watching it very carefully for the first initial days, and then over time kind of seeing where is this audience, or does our message resonate on these media platforms. So it always is important to start small and kind of think of it as a test. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket thinking, I ran one marketing campaign, I think I'm going to get 100 leads. We have to be realistic, and marketing, as we all know, kind of ramps up over time. So I would definitely say think of it as a test, and that's when it's really important to do the reporting aspects and then looking at the trends of the audience, and then take those learnings and apply it to either future campaigns or move some things around in the current campaign. But definitely start with the 30-day campaign as a test, and then move out from there and see where we can change. Maybe it's a creative messaging, it could be the amount of impressions, maybe the audience is not on social at all. We've seen that before. So it's definitely taking it as a learning experience, and kind of just taking those learnings and applying it to those different campaigns.
This one in from the chat pod. Hi Jenny, if this is run every month, are the same people targeted every month? How does that work? Great question. So the answer is we don't typically do the same people audience modeling each month. When we do an audience model, usually that's divided into different pools. So like pool one, if it's in conjunction with direct mail, we'll be mailing pool one in 1 month. The next month we'll be mailing pool two. So they are different audiences, but we do have some campaigns that we do where it is the same audience over a 3-month period. And when we do that, we always want to make sure that, because what you'll see if it's the same audience and same creative, the engagement's going to go down each month. So we want to add in maybe some new creative, even if it's the same offer, some new creative that displays it differently, because it does it does tend to kind of re-engage that audience. Here's one. How would I know if I had enough records to do a multi-channel campaign? And I'll take that on. So again, if we're modeling the audience, we know if there's enough to work with. Typically, to Amy's point on her slide, is that 50,000 data input records is ideal to have enough to work with. We do multi-channel campaigns that are to a smaller audience, but then we're a little bit more limited in the amount of channels that we can include on that. So say if we have a lower audience, we're not going to necessarily have any luck doing like OTT CTV or any other, where we're trying to have a bigger or a slightly bigger budget for that. before they even like let us serve on those, those channels. But for smaller audiences, native, display, and email, we can layer in all of those very, very nicely. Oh, Amy, this is a good one and a common question. Like, this is one of the first things that I asked when I started, years ago when we started doing this. What is an effective number of touch points for a 30-day campaign?
Yeah, so first off, it's going to depend on the amount of branding that you have in the market. If you don't have a lot of branding yet, you're going to want to do more touch points to get people to respond. But ideally, you want anywhere from about 10 to 25 touch points in a 30-day period. So we don't want to be serving too many touch points per week. We want to have a nice pacing in place, but we also don't want too infrequent touch points as well, because then you're not staying top of mind, especially if they're making a buying decision. You want to keep popping up ads as you're doing online research and making that choice whether or not to purchase them. So I'd say 10 to 25 per month.
Okay, Amy, we've talked about this a lot. So with the death of cookies coming, basically it got pushed back to 2023, but how will that affect how you serve ads?
So we're actually pretty lucky at Bridge because we made a decision years and years ago to move more towards mobile advertising IDs and email as key identifiers for serving our audiences as opposed to cookies. So the way we serve is by using that PII, and PII, in case people don't know that, is just email, first name, last name, postal information, and other unique identifiers such as mobile advertising ID tied to an encrypted email address. So when we build our audiences and we build our database and update our targeting, it's all tracked back to that PII, and it's not cookie based. So we're not relying on cookie tracking to build our targeting selects. So essentially, we are cookieless when we serve. The only time that we do use cookies would be for when we serve desktop display, and we use a cross-device graph or one of our partners' cross-device graphs to do that. But that is actually going away, and we have been working with outside partners to build a database around browser IDs or UIDs. It's called UID 2.0 to be specific. So that way we'll have a new numeric indicator for each individual that is not related to the cookies. So when cookies become obsolete, we'll be using that for serving our desktop display. And it's all going to be tied back to that encrypted email address. That's going to be the connector for serving.
All right, we are at 35 minutes. We have time for one more question that came in privately. Laura, I'll have you take this one. So what if we wanted to do a 3-month campaign versus 30 days? Would that work?
Yes. So we would start with 30 days and then move out from there and decide. But we can absolutely start with just a 30-day. You don't have to do the full 90, but obviously it works as it ramps up. But that's absolutely no problem at all. Starting small is just fine, just fine. So I think that we'd rather do 3 30-day campaigns, and that's okay. We can just refresh creative depending upon if the audience changes, but that's absolutely fine.
Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. If you think of any questions after today's presentation, please email us at info@infinitydirect.com, and we'll be sure to answer your questions. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.